Hi everybody, welcome to the explanation video for the Princeton Review Science Test 2. As we go through this video, it's really important that you look at how to answer the questions, not just memorizing the answers because you'll never see these questions again, but looking how to answer the questions and also thinking about the areas of science that you're perhaps weaker in and need to spend more time on. Let's have a look together. So for question number 1. Rocks are naturally occurring masses of one or more minerals. They're made from more than one mineral. There are 3 types of rocks, which are sedimentary, igneous, and metamorphic. Layers of minerals and organic matter that have been compressed over time are sedimentary rocks. So that compression, that pushing together, this is sedimentary. Igneous rocks, they're formed from cooling and solidification, so liquid rock cooling down to become solid rock. And then metamorphic rock formed below the surface of the earth with heat and pressure. So pumice is formed when molten rock is quickly expelled from the mouth of a volcano, while marble is formed when limestone is exposed to both high temperature and pressure. Therefore, pumice, which is molten rock, pumice needs to be igneous rock, and marble would be metamorphic rock because of both the heat and pressure being present. Question 2. Same passage. So we're talking about these igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic rocks. And the one thing that you really need to remember is the difference is igneous is heat only, sedimentary is pressure only, metamorphic is heat and pressure together. Metamorph always means to change. So we talk about the caterpillar metamorphing into a butterfly, the caterpillar changing into a butterfly. So metamorph always means to change. Now this question is, which type of rock would most likely be on the ocean floor? Well, it's not going to be igneous rock. The igneous rock is going to be near the mouth of the volcano, not near the ocean. And metamorphic rocks are below the surface of the earth, not on the ocean floor. Now, sedimentary rocks, if we think, sedimentary rocks are layers of minerals that are compressed over time. How do those layers of minerals get added up? Well, the river could wash away the sediments, the small bits of rock, dirt, dust, soil, and the river could move it along to the sea or to the ocean. And then over many years, these layers of rock come on top of each other. So the correct answer is going to be C, sedimentary. Now, question 3, we need to use this formula. Speed is distance over time. I might have shown you this before, but for me, I like to write formulas like this as a triangle. So time is equal to distance over speed. Speed is equal to distance over time. Distance is equal to the speed times the time. So if we write it as that triangle, distance, speed, time, then we can remember that we can cover any of those and the formula still works for the 2 variables that are left. Now, if a kitten was to run at a speed of 8 miles, so we have the speed, for 5 miles, this is the distance, how many minutes did the kitten run for? How many minutes? So 8 miles per hour for 5 miles. So we have 5 distance divided by the speed of 8. So 5 divided by 8 gives an answer. You can use the calculator, remember, gives an answer of 0.625. However, you need to notice that this is in miles per hour, and the question is wanting it in minutes. So this is 0.625 hours. We need to change that into minutes, and because there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, we need to multiply this by 60. And so the answer that we get is 37.5. Now, it doesn't tell you to round it, so we just leave the answer as 37.5. You never need to write the units in the exam. It would say the units outside the box. In the box, you just need to write the number. So the number is 37.5. We use the speed equals distance over time, but we change the formula because we're given the distance and the speed, not the time. And then remember to always check your units. Are you dealing in hours and minutes? Then you need to multiply by 60. Now let's look at the question before we read the passage. Which of the following is the chemical equation for photosynthesis? We should actually know this without even reading the passage, but we can read the passage just to make sure. In order to survive, mammals, that means animals, must find and consume food in either the form of plant or animal matter. Unlike mammals, however, plants can make their own food. When chlorophyll in plants' leaves is activated by sunlight, the process of photosynthesis begins. Photosynthesis is the process by which plants convert carbon dioxide and water and energy from the sun into glucose and oxygen. So C6H12O6 is glucose and O2 is oxygen. 6CO2 is the carbon dioxide and the H2O is the water. So the correct answer must be A. For B, this is not glucose. For C, we do have the ADP here. You don't need to know, but it is a type of energy that is used inside organisms when they need to do a task. Part of the phosphate is broken off the ATP, and that is the part of the energy that goes off to do the task. But that is not the sunlight's energy. And then D, we don't even have glucose or oxygen. We don't have water. Many things are wrong with D. Don't let something like this confuse you. Sometimes you will see ideas or options in questions that we've not studied in class. The best advice is in those times, go with what you know. We have covered just about every topic of science in class that could come up. So if you're seeing something that's new, then it's probably something more advanced and it might not be the right answer. The correct answer is A. Next question, which statement is not true? Make sure you see the word not there. Only plants can make their food from photosynthesis. Well, plants can make food, but animals cannot. Photosynthesis depends upon energy from the sun, while plants' leaves are activated by sunlight in the process of photosynthesis. So true, true. The products of photosynthesis are glucose and oxygen. Well, it's turned into glucose and oxygen. Plants turn it into glucose and oxygen. And then chlorophyll. Well, where is chlorophyll? Chlorophyll are in plants' leaves. Animals don't have any leaves. So both plants and animals do not have chlorophyll. Only plants have chlorophyll. So the correct answer is answer D. Now, deoxyribonucleic acid is a double helix structure and is comprised of nucleotides. You might remember these from class, the A, C, G, and T. Each nucleotide consists of a phosphate group, 5-carbon sugar molecule, and a nitrogen-containing base, which can be adenine, cytosine, guanine, or thymine. There are rules governing the pairs of nucleotide bases. For example, adenine only pairs with thymine, so A and T always go together. Cytosine only pairs with guanine. So we know that there is a double helix. There's a double helix. So if we have A on this side, it links to T on this side. If we have T on this side, it links to A on this side. So in the question, we have part of a strand of DNA, which is CGATCG. We're told the last two parts will be C and G. We're told that the first part is G. And we are asked to work out the second and the fourth. So G always goes with C. So the first answer would be cytosine. We can forget about the A because that's already given, it's the T. And then we're asked for the T, what will the T partner with? Well, the T will partner with A, with adenine. So the first answer is cytosine, and the second answer is adenine. For a question like this, you are advised to write out the chain and then to write out the other chain underneath. This will help you to find the right answer. Now, the skeletal system supports, protects the body and its organs, as well as aiding in motor skills. The skeletal system has bones, or hard connective tissue that form the structure of most vertebrates, that means with a backbone, that are connected together with tendons and ligaments. Tendons are fibrous cords of connective tissue that attach the muscle to the bone. Tendons attach the muscle to the bone. Cartilage or other muscles. Ligaments are short connective tissue that connect two bones together. So we need to drag the X onto the arrow that is pointing to the ligament. Well, a ligament joins two bones together. This one would be a muscle, so it's not this one. This one would be the bone, so it's not this one. It's difficult to see, but we kind of have the end of the muscle being joined to the next bone. So this that is joining the muscle to the bone would be a tendon. So it's not that one either. Here we have two bones joining together. We have the bone here. I'll just change that color for you. We have one bone here and we have one bone here. So where the two bones join together, we need to drag the X. We should have put the X on that line. We find that by seeing that the two bones connect together with a ligament. Which of the following planets is the fewest light minutes from Jupiter? Okay, so we have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and Jupiter. Which one is the closest to Jupiter? The answer is Mars. This circle here is the orbit of Mars. This circle here is the orbit of Jupiter. So the correct answer is Mars. Make sure you do answer the question carefully. If you don't read the question carefully, you might have thought which is the closest to the sun, the fewest minutes from the sun, or the closest to the Earth. But the question says the closest to Jupiter. Now, I don't think you'd get a question quite as easy as this in the real GED exam. However, we have got it here and we can only answer the questions that we're given. Of the 8 major planets in our solar system, the first thing we can see, there are 8 major planets. Half of them are inner planets, so 4 of them are inner planets, and 4 of them are outer planets. The inner planets, or those closest to the Sun, have metallic cores and are formed primarily of rock. So the 4 planets that are closest to the Sun will be these down here: Mars, Mercury, Venus, and Earth. So for the inner planets, we know there need to be 4. So we choose Mars, we choose Mercury, we choose Earth, and we choose Venus. And we make sure that this target is fully in the box. If the target is not fully in the box, you will get the answer wrong. It's not the word, it's the target that needs to be in the box. So this part here. It's like shooting a gun. It's like looking through a scope on a gun. You need to make sure the scope is in the box. Now, we're told that there are 8 major planets. So there must be 4 outer planets because 4 plus 4 is 8. So which of these 4 are the names of planets? Jupiter is on the diagram. Saturn, we should know, is on the diagram. Uranus, we should know, and then Neptune. It does not say that you have to use all of the answers. In fact, there are 2 answers that you did not need to use. Gandalf is not the name of a planet, and the Sun is the name of a star, not a planet. So be careful. Sometimes you don't need to use all of the options. Sometimes there are extra answers there to try and confuse you. Approximately how many astronomical units is Mercury from Mars? Round your answer to the nearest integer. An integer, I hope you remember, is a whole number. So we need to have a whole number. Astronomical units are on the right side of the diagram. If I was to draw this line up here, I see that the 1.5 is on the orbit of Mars. So Mars is 1.5 units from the Sun. Mercury, if I was to draw this line up here, okay, it's not quite straight, but I'm struggling with the mouse, I would see that Mercury is 0.39 units from the Sun. So the distance between Mercury and Mars is 1.5 minus 0.39, which would give us the answer 1.11. We need to round to the nearest integer, so the correct answer is 1 unit. Again, we don't need to write the units, we just need to write the number. It's the number 1. The nucleus of an atom is composed of protons and neutrons. So inside of our nucleus, we have protons and we have neutrons. With the exception of hydrogen, an atom must have at least 1 neutron for every proton. So at least means if we have 1 proton, we need to have at least 1 neutron or more. 1 proton, 1 or more neutrons. 2 protons, 2 or more neutrons. So if the element dubninium has 105 protons, how many neutrons can it not have? Well, it can have 105 protons, so it needs to have 105 or more neutrons. So 105, okay, 157 is more, 163 is also more, but A, 102, this is less than 1 proton for every neutron. So A is the correct answer. I don't think you get a question like this in your exam. It is a little bit too much like knowledge, but hopefully you got it correct. The law of conservation of mass states that matter can neither be created nor destroyed. Then it asks you about the law of conservation of energy. Well, the law of the conservation of energy is exactly the same. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. Cannot be created or destroyed. So cannot be created, cannot be destroyed, can neither be created is correct, nor destroyed is correct. Energy is not created or destroyed, it just changes form. Potential energy might become kinetic energy on a roller coaster. Chemical energy inside charcoal might become heat energy when we burn it on a fire. Electrical energy might become sound energy as we play music through loudspeakers. Energy changes form, but you always have the same amount at the beginning and the end. That is the idea of conservation, saving. Nothing is created or destroyed. Now, these next questions are based on this chart. I'm sorry, the copy is not great, but it's quite a difficult book to take pictures from. Which of the following statements is not supported by information provided? So 3 of these statements should be proven to be true. 1 of the statements will not be true. The beginning of the Archean eon was approximately 3.8 billion years ago. So we need to find the Archean. The Archean is down here. The beginning is here. The end is here. This is because this is the beginning of the Earth, and this is now. So it was born, or it began, or it was created 3,800 million years ago. 3,800 million. So we add on 6 noughts. But another way of saying 3,800 million would be to say 3.8 billion. Okay, 3.8 billion. So 3.8 billion is true. This cannot be the correct answer. The Cambrian period was the first period of the Paleozoic era. The Paleozoic era is here. The first period was the Cambrian period. The last period was the Permian period. This is true. There is no record dealing the eras and the periods of the Hadean era. Well, the Hadean era is here, and it says no record. So it looks like this is also true. The Proto-Cambrian period is about 87% of the geological timescale. The Proto-Cambrian period. Well, we have Precambrian is about 87% of the geological timescale. The Precambrian, it does not say Proto-Cambrian. So D is not given or false. It is not supported. So D is the correct answer. For a question like this, you need to go through carefully and make sure that you check if each answer is true, false, or not given. This question is quite easy. It says, how old is the Earth? And if we look at the graph, it says the Earth is 4.8 billion years old, the origin, the beginning. And we need to round to the 10th. So all we need to say is 4.6. Just match the answer from here. On to question 15. The Phanerozoic eon is comprised of the Paleozoic, the Something, and the Cenozoic eras. Now, the Phanerozoic eon, we need to find this in our graphic. So we go to eon first, and we go down, and we have the Phanerozoic here. Then we have the Paleozoic, the Something, and the Cenozoic. The one that is missing is the Mesozoic era. So Mesozoic is the answer that we need. Each of these eras is further broken into periods and epochs. The Mesozoic era is comprised of the Cretaceous, the Jurassic, and the Triassic periods, which spanned from 245 million years before the present to how many millions of years before the present? Well, the correct answer, when do the end? The Mesozoic era ends here, which is 66 million years. So the correct answer is 66. So question number 16. pH is the hydrogen ion concentration of a solution. Chemists use a numeric scale that ranges from 0 to 14 to measure the pH of a solution. A pH of less than 7 indicates that a solution is acidic. So acidic would be 0 to 6.9. A pH of 7 indicates a neutral solution, and a pH greater than 7 indicates an alkaline solution. So 7.1 plus. So drag the items into the correct box. Now, I would guess that some of these were very easy for you to do. The lemon juice, pH of 2, acidic. Soda, pH of 3, acidic. Urine, pH of 6, acidic. And then soap, pH 11, so alkaline. And bleach, pH of 12, so alkaline. And we have 3 answers left. Pure water, not seawater, which has picked up sediment, but pure water. Water that contains nothing else but hydrogen and oxygen atoms. Pure water. Pure water is neutral. Then we have battery acid. Well, the key there is in the word acid. Battery acid. It says acid because it's an acid, so it needs to go down here. And the one that's left is the antacid tablets. I know that this says acid, but if we say anti, we are against something. So antacid tablets, antacid means against acid. What is opposite to acid? It's alkalines or bases. So antacid tablets would go into the alkaline section. Antacid tablets are what you take if you get indigestion, if you get heartburn. Maybe you've eaten too much acidic food, and so you would take some alkaline tablets like milk of magnesia to bring down the acid. That would be an example of a neutralization reaction. The acid plus base creating a salt plus water. I'm not sure you'd get a question quite this easy in the exam, but neutralization, acid plus base creates salt plus water. That does come up in quite a lot of practice exams, so you should really make sure that you know that neutralization equation. Next, how many chromosomes do humans have? Well, in humans, each cell contains 23 pairs of chromosomes for a total of 46. Read the question carefully. How many pairs do we have? Well, we have 23 pairs. So the correct answer is B. You can see from this diagram. that we have 22 pairs where they are all very similar. These are similar, they are similar. But the X and Y chromosomes, they are very different. And they are actually the sex chromosomes. That is the difference between the male and the female. Females, they have 2 copies of X, but male have 1 X and 1 Y. The mother will always give an X chromosome, but if the father gives a Y chromosome, then it will be a male baby. If the father gives the X chromosome that it's carrying, then it will be a female baby. So the sex of the birth depends on the genetic inheritance from the father. Magnets are objects with strong magnetic fields which attract or repel other objects. A magnet has both a north pole and a south pole. Like poles, so north and north would repel. They would push each other away from each other. They would repel. But opposite poles, or unlike poles, opposite poles, they attract. So if we have north and north, they would move away. But if we have a north and a south, then they would come together. They would be attracted to each other. Magnets can be categorized as either permanent, which are made from highly magnetic materials like iron, or temporary, which can function only through the use of electricity. So, a temporary magnet needs electricity. Put the X onto all of the temporary magnets. Well, we should have an X here. The battery gives electricity. We should have an X here. It says in the diagram that there's an electric source. This one is a bar magnet. It is made from a magnetic material. You cannot turn it off. It is always magnetic. The same here. There's the North Pole and the South Pole. And the same here. This is a ring magnet. These materials are probably iron. The objects are always magnetic. So what you should have had is 2 X's, one on the battery with the nail. The battery creates the electric current, and the wire around the nail creates the magnetic field, and the electromagnet in the middle at the top. Consider the cross between a heterozygous dominant cat with a long tail and a homozygous recessive cat with a short tail. What do we have? We have heterozygous dominant with a long tail and a homozygous recessive with a short tail. We need to know what is long, what is short. Long tails are dominant, they get the big L. So this cross, the heterozygotic dominant cat would have one big L and one small L. It's heterozygotic, so it's got a difference. It mates with a homozygotic recessive cat. So the homozygotic has 2 small L's. What is the likelihood that they will have offspring with a long tail? Well, this one will be long. This one will be short. This one would be long. This one would be short. So the correct answer is 50-50. Half of the cats would likely have long tails, and half of the cats would likely have short tails. In this kind of question, you don't really need to read that information above that line. That is just general information that you should know already. It talks about Gregor Mendel, who studied the effects of breeding on different types of pea plants. He wanted to look at the height, which he used for H. He looked at dominant alleles, so he wanted tall, pure plants, and he bred them with short plants, and he looked at what traits were inherited by the offspring. Mendel found that offspring of two homozygotic dominant plants would always produce tall plants. There is no small allele. The offspring of two homozygotic recessive plants would always produce short plants. There's no dominant allele. The offspring of a homozygotic dominant and a homozygotic recessive would always be tall. They would always get one dominant allele and one recessive allele. And the recessive allele would be carried, but it would not be visible. When you're answering a question like this, you need to know which trait is dominant and which trait is recessive. Then you can draw your Punnett square to work out the percentages. Mendel noted that plants with a single dominant allele for height led the plant to express the trait for height. This exemplifies the law of what? Well, it's a dominant allele. Okay, we haven't really looked at this terminology in class, but a dominant allele expresses the trait, so this is about dominance. The correct answer would be A. What is the probability expressed as a percentage that two homozygotic recessive cats will have a cat with a long tail? So we have recessive and we have recessive. What offspring do they have? Well, they have a short tail, a short tail, a short tail, and a short tail. There is no long allele. If they are both homozygotic recessive, they have short tails because they are not carrying a single copy of the dominant allele for long tails. Therefore, the offspring cannot get a dominant allele from anywhere. So the correct answer is 0 cats will have a long tail from two parents that have short tails. So question 22. Which of the following statements is not expressed by Newton's laws of motion? An object at rest will remain at rest unless acted upon by some outside force. That kind of sounds like the first law of motion. The work of an object is equal to the product of the force upon that object and the distance that the object travels. Now, don't be confused. It is talking about the size of the force, but it's not quite the same as Newton's second law. When acted upon by an external force, an object will accelerate in proportion to that force. That might be the second law of motion. And for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. That's our favorite law. That's the third law. So which of these is not expressed by these laws of motion? Well, the action-reaction, this is the third law. The first law of motion, the law of inertia, states that if something is at rest or moving, it will continue to do so unless acted upon by an outside force. This is the first law. The first law of motion is why if a car suddenly brakes and you are traveling inside the car, you will lurch, you will go forward when the car stops. Now, let's look at the second one carefully. The second law states that a force, F, acting on a body is equal to the mass of the body times its acceleration, F equals ma. Now, what do we have in B? Well, in B, we have the work of an object is equal to the force of the object and the distance. So work equals force times distance. Now, both of them do have force, but the work and distance is a different type of formula. It's not one of Newton's 3 laws of motion. So the correct answer is B. Which phase of mitosis is illustrated in this diagram? Well, cells go through 2 stages. They have the interphase and the mitosis. The interphase is the time between the cell division. It is when the cell is living, when it is carrying out the life functions. During interphase, we have 3 phases. We have G1, when the replication of enzymes are produced. We have S when the chromosomes are replicated, and G2 when the cell prepares for mitosis. But this is during the interphase. The question is asking you about mitosis, and mitosis starts with paragraph 2. Mitosis consists of 4 stages: prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. During prophase, the cell's nucleus disappears. It's true that there is no nucleus in this diagram, but we can see that there are chromosomes or chromatids on each side of the cell, and the cell's kind of got this shape in the middle. So it looks like it's starting to separate, it's starting to elongate. So this is not the first stage, it's not prophase when the nucleus disappears and the chromosomes become visible. During metaphase, the chromosomes line up along the center of the metaphase plate. They are not in the center. They've already finished lining up in the center. So it's not prophase and it's not going to be metaphase either. During anaphase, the next one, anaphase, the cell elongates. It gets wider or longer. So that seems to be happening. As the sister chromatids of each chromosome separate, we can see they are separated and they migrate to opposite poles, to opposite sides. We have the centriole and the spindle fibers pulling one copy of each chromatid to the opposite side. This is anaphase. The final phase is telophase. Telos always means the end. Telophase is when the new nuclear membrane appears and the cell separates into 2 daughter cells through cytokinesis. The scale for measuring heat is temperature, or the kinetic energy of the molecules in an object. But temperature can be measured in Celsius, like in Europe. In Celsius, 0 degrees is freezing point and 100 degrees is boiling point of water. All liquids would boil at different temperatures. In Fahrenheit, though, the freezing point of water is 32 degrees Fahrenheit and the boiling point is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit is mostly used in America. Then there's Kelvin. Kelvin you might not have heard of before, but Kelvin is the standard international unit, the SI, of thermodynamic temperature. Basically, Kelvin is used by scientists. Because there's Celsius and Fahrenheit and different systems in different countries, scientists have their own standard unit of measuring. In the Kelvin scale, 0 Kelvin is absolute zero. At absolute zero, all movement stops, all molecular movement stops. So there is nothing below 0. Now, Robert is measuring the temperature of a steel ball across a variety of environmental conditions. All of the following are possible temperatures of the ball except, well, minus 45 degrees Celsius would be very cold. It would be below freezing. But if you go to the Arctic or the Antarctica, you can get minus 45 degrees Celsius. 20 degrees Fahrenheit would be cold. It would be below freezing. 450 degrees Fahrenheit would be very hot. It would be above boiling point. But all of these are possible temperatures. The one that is not is answer B. In Kelvin, 0 degrees is absolute zero. Absolute means there is nothing less. So absolute zero, where all motion stops, there is nothing below this temperature. -1 does not exist. Next, we need to convert Celsius into Fahrenheit. So we look here, we have the Celsius and we want to convert to Fahrenheit. So according to this table, Celsius times 1.8 plus 32. So we take our 42 and we put that into the equation. So it's 42 times by 1.8. 0.8 and then add on 32. In the exam, you would use a calculator. 42 times 1.8 is 75.6. And then if we add on the 32, our final answer is 107.6. We write the number only, we don't need to write the units. It does not say to round, so we need to write the whole number. So 107.6. Now we're looking at endothermic and exothermic reactions. Heat transfer from particles of one object to another due to different temperatures. Exothermic is when the heat exits, when it is released, when it exits. Endothermic is one that absorbs the heat, or heat enters. So when you light a candle, if you put your hand above the candle, you will feel that there is heat. The candle is giving out heat, heat is exiting. So the answer is exothermic. But when you're cooking an egg, the egg needs to absorb the heat energy so that the egg can change from the liquid into the solid. Whether you fry or you boil, both times the egg needs to absorb that heat energy to change. So cooking an egg would be endothermic. What is this diagram? Well, we can see one thing goes into one thing at many different stages. So because one thing is going in at each stage, we have a food chain. A food web is where we can see all the different relationships in the environment. A food pyramid is showing like a pyramid going up, how many organisms go into each above organism. But this is just a simple food chain. What is the secondary consumer? Well, we have the producer, which is the grass. We have the primary consumer, the cricket. We have the secondary consumer, which is the frog. So the correct answer is C, frog. In a food chain, 10% of the energy is transferred from one level to the next. This is the 10% rule. The other 90% is used for the life processes, for moving, for reproducing, for growing. For all of the things that the organism has to do, it uses energy. Only 10% of the energy consumed is stored inside the body, and that is what is passed on. So, if the cricket consumes 500 units of energy, how much is passed to the frog? So the cricket has 500. That means the frog will get 10%. The frog will get 50. And then we want to know what will be finally passed to the hawk. So to the snake, 10% would be 5. To the hawk, 10% would be 0.5. So if 500 units of energy went from the cricket to the frog, only 0.5 units of that energy would be left for the hawk. That's why the top consumer, there are less of them. You think about crickets, there are many, many crickets all around the environment. That's because they don't pass on enough energy. And as you go up the food chain, the number of organisms that can be supported at each level decreases. Next, we get on to this periodic table of elements. It might be difficult for you to see because the size is small. If so, you can zoom in for these practice tests. In the real exam, I'm sure that they will give you a diagram that is easy to see. But in these practice tests, some of the pictures are a little bit complicated. Which of the following is not an alkali metal? Well, in the periodic table, elements are ordered by their atomic number, by electron configurations and recurring chemical properties. As shown in the diagram above, from left to right, top to bottom, Elements are listed in order of atomic number. The number of protons increases. There is 1 in hydrogen, there are 2 in helium, 3 in lithium, 4 in beryllium, 5 in boron, etc., etc. And then the elements in the same group or column share similar properties. So these red ones are the alkaline metals. So these are the alkaline metals: lithium, sodium, which is Na, potassium, which is K, rubidium, Rb, caecerium, Cs, and francium, Fr. The one that is not included is hydrogen. We can see that even though hydrogen is in the same column, and it's in the same column because it has 1 electron in the outer shell, it is not the same color. It is a blue. And in fact, that dark blue color are non-metals. We can see the dark blue color, it is a non-metal. Which element has 2 protons per atom? Well, we are told that the number of protons equals the atomic number. If we look at the question again, the atomic number, which is the number of protons in each atom. The atomic number is shown in the top left corner. Hydrogen has 1, helium has 2, beryllium has 4, and ion, Fe, is here with 26. So the number 2 is on this one, on the helium. So the correct answer is B. It is helium. On to the last 2 questions. The second codon in the string of RNA with bases AUG, UAC, CGU, AGU is what? Now, don't get confused between the 4 nucleotides that make up the DNA and the bases which make up RNA. RNA are much more complicated. RNA are made from U, C, A, and G, but there are lots of different combinations that make lots of different codons. Let's have a look. mRNA, messenger RNA, contains a sequence of nucleotide bases that are translated into codons and, in turn, code for the amino acids to make protein chains. Codons make amino acids. A codon, very important, a codon is a set of 3 nucleotide bases that form a unit of genetic code. For example, the string of RNA that contains the nucleotide bases AUG, CAU, UGU has an initial codon of AUG. Now, a codon is 3 nucleotide bases. So AUG, AUG would be 1 codon. So here, AUG would be a codon. UAC would be the second codon. CGU would be the third codon, and AGU would be the final codon. We are asked for the second codon. If you look here, AUG, well, let's start with A. The first base is the first letter, and then the second letter. So the first letter is A, so we start here. The second letter is U, so we go here. So AU, AUG, AUG is here, which is methionine, the start codon. And we see that there, the methionine. We're asked, what is the second codon of this string? The second codon is UAC. UAC. Well, that means we start on the row of U. So here is our row of U. The other 3 rows we can forget about. The second one is A, so we go to the A column. So we can forget about these boxes and we can forget about this box. We're looking for UAC. Well, UAC is here. And UAC is tyrosine. So now, do we find tyrosine? Yes. Answer B, tyrosine. That is the correct answer. Final question. Which of the following nucleotide base is not associated with RNA? Now, again, we're not looking at DNA. DNA, which is adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine. We're looking at RNA. And we have bases. U, C, A, G. U is the uracil. C is not here, but it's cytosine. A, the adenine, and G, the guanine. T is not included in the RNA. This is an RNA table. RNA, which makes codons. We can see that in the table, there's UUU, there's UCU, there's CAU. In this table, there is no T. So, thymine is the correct answer. Thymine has nothing to do with the RNA production. This topic I know is more difficult. I think if you go and review the beginning of the 4th textbook, if you're struggling with this, and there were a few questions in the 3rd workbook that you can look at as well. But as you go through the video, if you do find topics that you're struggling with, you are welcome to come and ask me. This exam was perhaps a little bit easier than the exam that you will face. There were some really good questions in here that made you think, but there were also some quite simple questions in here. So be prepared. The real exam will be a little bit more difficult. Also, something that was not tested in this video was the scientific method, the idea of drawing conclusions, of identifying independent and dependent variables, of looking for errors in the method, sources of error. This is a big part of the new GED and it's not included in many of the practice exams. So please do remember to review all of that work on scientific method and variables, controlling variables, and finding errors in investigations. Okay, that's the end of the video. There will be a new test online soon. Ossula Saikoda.